Vincent?
Hello?
Hello, you sound a bit distant.
Hold on.
You sound like you're in the other room.
Hello, can you hear me now?
Yes, but you sound a little faint, like you're, well, not in the same room.
Is it better now? No?
Yeah, I guess.
Wait, hold on.
I mean, I can
Hello?
hear you. I can. Yeah.
Maybe it's because... Wait, hold on. Is it better now?
Well, I'll just turn up the volume.
I don't know what I'm doing. Yeah, it does seem to be... It's not picking up my voice that well?
Well, I've just turned up the volume. I can hear you, but usually you sound a bit louder. I wonder what other people think, but there's no one. There's no one
Hold on, let me
listening at
try
the moment.
something. Hello?
Yeah, I think that sounds a bit better.
Does it sound better?
Yes.
Okay, good.
I'll keep reading the chat in case other people don't agree, but there's nobody. Oh, there's two people to ask at the moment, two viewers already. Yeah. So, have you heard of Andy Nowicki?
A little bit. I was trying to look him up. He's what, a leftist?
Not really. Well, he calls himself the alt-right novelist. So he's always writing novels, and he is associated. I couldn't even find a bio of him, but he's associated. He was associated with Richard Spencer and Colin Liddell, and people like that, and was actually associated with the alt-right, as it was then called. I mean, I actually can't pick up. I couldn't find a decent bio of him anywhere, and he's not really. I mean, he's got loads of books, but I mean, it's just such a silly profile. Like Andy Nowicki is a writer, speaker, prophet, seer, revelator, gigolo, assassin, and empath, former co-editor of Alternative Right. Nowicki has contributed to numerous dissident online journals and has... I can tell you're doing the dishes.
Oh, hold on. Let me put myself on mute.
So let me see what... But yeah, he's known for writing lots of books, novels, and he was on Karani Yule. And anyway, he is one of the figures of the dissident right. And I seem to remember that he was a English professor, and therefore one of the more educated people of the dissident right. Unfortunately, he's not particularly interested in reading or reviewing my book. I think he did say that he had got round to ordering it and, in fact, possesses it, but I guess he just falls into his usual routine of pontificating in his car about this and that. And he likes movies. He obviously watches lots of them because a lot of his streams are about movies he has seen. And apart from that, he occasionally talks politics. And the essay that I sent you today, Vincent, by somebody called Matthew Rose, was one of the ones mentioned by him on his YouTube channel. So, did you by any chance read the essay of Matthew Rose of the first, from the First Thing? It's a Catholic journal.
No, I did not.
Have you heard of Dominique Venner?
No, who's that?
He's a French historian and intellectual. He was a supporter of Vichy France, and he committed suicide spectacularly at Notre Dame, I think it was.
Oh, yes, I heard. Older gentleman, right? He was older?
Yes. And it's a kind of like, I mean, have you heard of Yukio Mishima, who spectacularly committed harakiri?
Yeah, for Palestine, right?
No, that was Arnold Bushnell, who self-immolated outside the Israeli embassy. But Yukio Mishima was the samurai who disemboweled himself. This was in the 70s, I think. Let me just check. But basically, he was not happy with the way Japan was going, and his suicide after a failed coup. I mean, he writes novels. Was his way of making his point. This was in 1970, when he was 45 years old. He was quite popular with the right. I think he was gay, but he was married. I mean, there were a few interesting extracts of that essay by Matthew Rose that I could read to you from the First Things magazine. I mean, it annoyed me because it was sort of like, oh dear, what should we do? Before I forget, I should mention that Dominique Venner died at the Cathedral of Notre Dame on 21st May 2013. So he was born in 1935, and yes, that was his way of committing suicide at the age of 78. He had wife and children. But he was saying, what did he did it because he was angry with gay marriage. And okay, let me just read it to you. Venner, outraged by the recent legalization of same-sex marriage in France, which he believed would result in a white genocide, killed himself inside the Cathedral of Notre Dame de Paris. In a suicide note, he said his death was an act in defense of the traditional family and in the fight against illegal immigration. Venner believed that the far right had become too soft and that peaceful demonstrations against same-sex marriage were not enough to prevent a total replacement of the population of France and of Europe. The leader of the far-right National Front, Marine Le Pen, described the suicide as an act of a broken man desperately seeking to reawaken his countrymen. So, shall I read the essay?
Sure.
Since you're actually doing something, and maybe others might want to. Unless you'd like to say something, would you like? Is there anything you want to say before you? It's it's longish. That's why I meant.
No, I mean, if you want to read it, go ahead. I'll listen.
Okay. On May 21st, 2013, the French writer Dominique Venner took his own life in front of the main altar of Notre Dame Cathedral in Paris. Venner was 78 years old, and he put a handgun into his mouth and pulled the trigger. He left a note on the altar to explain his gesture, which took place before nearly 1,000 church visitors. After declaring his soundness of mind and expressing regret to his wife and 5 children, Venner wrote that he offered his life as a sacrificial protest to awaken Europeans to a civilizational crisis. Quote, I love life and expect nothing beyond other than the perpetuation of my race and my mind. However, in the evening of this life, in front of huge dangers for my French and European country, I feel the duty to act so long as I have strength. I sacrifice myself to break the lethargy that has overtaken us. I offer my life as a protest. While so many people are slaves of their lives, my gesture embodies an ethical will. I give death to myself in order to awaken slumbering consciences. I protest against the poisons that are destroying our identity and the foundation of our civilization. Unquote. Venner's writing in the weeks before his suicide left little doubt as to the nature of his concerns. In early May, France had been convulsed by protests over the legalization of same-sex marriage and debates over growing numbers of immigrants from the Maghreb and sub-Saharan Africa. For Venner, new conceptions of marriage and citizenship were alarming signs that the country had reached a state of cultural emergency. Already uncertain about its national identity and ashamed of its colonial past, France seemed in Venner's mind to be welcoming its own extinction. There exists no historical example of a civilization pushing to this point a refusal to survive and a desire to eliminate itself, he solemnly explained. Although several media reports described him as a conservative and a Catholic, Venner was in fact neither. A revolutionary and a pagan, Venner was an influential figure in a modern intellectual movement that has sought to recover human values suppressed by 2 centuries of liberalism and 2 millennia of Christianity. The son of a father devoted to the Vichy cause, he had been active in nationalist movements as a young man. In the early 1960s, he served a prison sentence for his involvement in the organization, the OAS, Organization Army Secret. I'm not going to say it in French. I'll try. Organisation. Can't get it. A paramilitary and terrorist organization that sought to defend French Algeria and prevent that country's independence. I seem to remember a mention of that in The Day of the Jackal, if you ever saw that, about the assassin of Charles de Gaulle, I think, played by Edward Fox. To continue, during his time in prison, Venner studied the writings of Lenin, whom he came to admire for extracting a potent political doctrine out of the work of Marx. But Venner concluded that the Cold War conflict between liberalism and communism was deceptive, masking problems that could not be addressed by political activism. I don't quite know what that means, really. So there was a conflict between liberalism and communism. Oh, never mind. The crisis of the West, he resolved, is spiritual and requires a complete rethinking of the nature of European identity. In the 5 decades following his release, Venner turned to writing, authoring books that combined a widely admired prose style with an impressive knowledge of Western literature, philosophy, and art. His death was covered in the New Yorker by the magazine's longtime poetry critic. Venner ended his suicide note by directing readers to his recent books where they could find a clear foreshadowing of his final action and a fuller statement of the ideals that inspired it. In a book published in 2011, he had reflected at length on what he called the tradition of voluntary death. He lamented the degrading influence of a morality that valued bodily life and comfort as the highest goods. and he extolled the suicides of historical figures such as the Roman aristocrat Cato for upholding the ideal that it is better to end one's life than to compromise with decadence or dishonor. Venner's voice from beyond the grave attempted to explain the difference between his death and the suicide of France. If France was poisoning itself through degenerate values, his suicide bore witness to the noble and heroic ideals that France had rejected. And to understand them, he wrote, one must understand the vision of human life to which his action offered testimony. And what is that vision? I call it the radical right, an intellectual tradition that has long been dismissed as reactionary or irrelevant. But that is changing, and for disconcertingly good reasons. Across our culture, a crisis is unfolding that Dominique Venner and thinkers like him confidently anticipated. We watch as Western nations slide into political dysfunction and social decay. We witness falling life expectancies, declining rates of marriage and religious practice, a swelling pandemic of loneliness, mass confusion around the nature and ideals of manhood, a collapse of cultural and historical literacy, an erosion of trust in institutions, and signs of a new multipolar global order rising to challenge the West's hegemony. And amid all this, many feel the tremors of a theopolitical revolution. We read eulogies for Christianity, no longer written by secular progressives, but by those hailing the ascendancy of a post-Christian right. The choices we face in confronting this dangerous moment are as much spiritual as political. Understanding them will require us to broaden our social imagination, expand our historical horizons, and venture beyond the well-guarded boundaries of public life. In doing this, we will find that we have crucial things to learn from a body of controversial ideas to which Dominique Venner gave voice. I say this not to valorize his action or to grant him the posthumous benediction he wished for. Venner's suicide was the self-destructive apotheosis of his dark vision of identity politics. But the ideals that shaped his mind and which stir the passions of many repay serious study. They can help us see and repair the defects in the political traditions that we dearly value. And they can help us understand and renew the Christian tradition to which they are directly opposed. The radical right emerged in the decades before the Second World War and came to define itself in opposition to the political consensus that characterized post-war Western democracies. Its leading thinkers came from Germany, Italy, France, and the United States. Together, they told a story about the 20th century, a story that turned a dominant historical narrative on its head. The mainstream view treated the peace and prosperity of Western nations as a sign of their fundamental political health. It regarded the victory of democracy in the war as proof that the deepest questions about its legitimacy had been decisively answered. It saw the global influence of Western values and habits as evidence of its civilizational triumph, and it saw the history of the West as one of progressive development towards its present form. The story of the West began in Plato and triumphed in NATO, or so the narrative went. Central to the story was a belief in the unique legitimacy of liberal democracy. To its defenders, liberal democracy was a form of political life that reflected the values shared by all reasonable persons. This consensus regarded human beings as free and equal by nature. It saw legitimate authority resting on the consent of the governed. It understood the chief purpose of government to be the protection of individual rights under the rule of law, and it believed in the separation of politics from divisive religious questions. However sharply the left and right disagreed about how to protect freedom and promote equality, they did not disagree about their supreme importance. For many in the post-war era, it was therefore easier to imagine the end of the world than to imagine the end of liberalism. The radical right told a starkly different story and imagined a dramatically different future. It saw the West's preoccupation with material wealth and economic growth as a sign of its moral decadence and spiritual poverty. It saw liberal democracy not as the antipode of communism, but its twin, an ideology that restricted thought, uprooted cultures, and levelled social differences no less effectively than Marxism did. It saw the West's openness to immigration and fascination with multiculturalism as evidence of paralyzing insecurity about its own identity and a sign of its willful blindness to the reality of human differences. The history of the West was a proverbial tale of moral decline in which the virile virtues needed to build a civilization were slowly corrupted by luxury and complacency. For the radical right, then, it was not impossible to imagine a world after liberalism. It was necessary. The thinkers who told this story in the decades after World War II play a double role in our intellectual life. When they are not simply ignored, their ideas are alleged to be not only self-evidently wrong, but also uniquely dangerous, both fundamentally alien to our core values and also insidiously threatening to them. A common view, therefore, holds that they give voice to prejudices that should be severely prescribed rather than human possibilities that should be critically examined. If this approach was prudent in an earlier time, I believe it no longer is. Today it works not to protect our highest ideals, but to deprive us of access to them. We are imperiled by hubris, naivete, and stale thinking, not the return of fascism. In a 2005 book, Dominique Venner argued that the greatest danger confronting Europe is not political or military in nature. It is the danger of amnesia. Western peoples have forgotten who they are and who they once were. As Venner imagined it, the world is teeming with people who are certain of their group identities, proud of their distinctiveness and zealous to defend and transmit their traditions. The nations of the West, however, have become the exception. Not only are they estranged from a past that they can scarcely remember, they are demoralized to an almost pathological degree. They celebrate other cultures as superior to their own. They judge their history by standards applied to no others, and they allow their values to be wielded cynically against them. As Venner wrote, Western nations have bias against themselves, preferring other communities above their own. Shall I continue, Vincent?
Yes.
Okay. Venner therefore undertook to recall Europeans to their lost identity. He began by noting that Europeans are no different from other peoples. They have an identity that is unique to them, a collective character that subtly but unmistakably imprints itself on every aspect of their lives. This identity cannot be discovered in human DNA or indeed in anything biological. Identity is revealed in culture, in that sphere of activity by which human beings struggle to raise themselves above the pressures of animal and material life. The distinctive character of that struggle inspires and shapes everything that a culture does. It is the soul of its art, language, music, architecture, religion, politics, games, cuisine, and folkways. Cultural forms and styles change over time, Venner argued, but their inner spirit always remains one and the same. From the cave paintings of prehistoric Europe to the poems of Homer, from Roman philosophers to the literature of medieval chivalry, from Renaissance visions of empire up until today, Venner found a single spiritual thread, a cultural bloodline linking Western culture across a span of 30,000 years. His argument borrowed from a major figure in the radical right, the Italian philosopher Julius Evola. Evola claimed to have discovered the permanent principles of all human societies by peering into the unrecorded realms of human prehistory. Inspired by Evola's speculative histories, Venner claimed to have discovered the primal origin of Western culture. He called it tradition, a term he described in almost theological ways. Tradition is the invisible wellspring of Western culture, the generative source of all it is and does. Tradition is that in which Europeans live and move and have their being. It is the deepest core of their identity, providing the permanent truths that find expression in Western art, thought, and life. As Venner explained it, tradition exerts a metaphysical influence, functioning as the collective soul that disposes Western people to experience reality in a unique way. Sight, sensation, speech, imagination, desire, reasoning. For Venner, every human faculty is inwardly shaped by tradition. As a vision of human identity, Venner's was profoundly illiberal. At root, we are custodians, not creators, inheritors, not choosers, and cultures make us fundamentally different, not alike. We exist not only through genealogies we have not chosen and under obligations we cannot renounce. We exist as bearers of a collective identity that binds us indissolubly to those who are like us and separates us forever from those who are different. Europeans can respect other cultures. Venner wrote of his own admiration for Japanese tradition, but in no civilization, he argued, can cultural outsiders truly share a common life with cultural insiders, and it is foolish or worse to attempt to confect a multicultural society. However, tradition can be forgotten or betrayed, and the consequences are shattering for human identity. Venner attributed the chaos of modern culture to the illusion that human identity can be discovered only when we are freed from compulsions of custom and the impositions of the past. Venner affirmed the opposite. An individual severed from tradition can have no identity at all. Venner's history of Europe focused on ancient city-states, medieval feudalism, and modern doctrines of political sovereignty. Pagan, Christian, and secular societies had different intellectual and artistic styles, as well as seemingly profound differences in religious faith and practice. But what they had in common, he maintained, was far more important and grounded the continuity of European identity over time. It was a code of human conduct informed by an ethic of heroism. The West was founded on a heroic conception of life and ethics of honor, he wrote, and sought to build its political order based on the hierarchy of merit and value. What Venner called an ethics of honor explained a special aspect of European identity. Western culture is often noted for its individualism and competitiveness, as well as its celebration of rebels, explorers, founders, and visionaries. Venner sought to explain this dynamism by tracing its origin to an ethical code that accorded social status through competition. In its purest and most traditional form, competition was not motivated by a desire for wealth, resources, or even power. The competition was aristocratic and its reward was honor, the pure prestige of being recognized as the best, the most excellent. Unlike an ethics of dignity, an ethics of honor does not distinguish between good and evil, in which the transgression results in guilt. It distinguishes between superior and inferior, where defeat results in shame. Venner was drawing inspiration from another seminal radical right thinker, the German historian Oswald Spengler. Spengler argued that the distinct character of European culture was explained by an inner drive that he called Faustian. As a Faustian culture, the West places its highest value not on the survival of the group, but on the daring achievements of exceptional individuals. Spengler surveyed Western science, music, architecture, philosophy, and technology, and concluded that in every domain, the culture of the West has been motivated by a heroic drive to overcome existing limits and to surpass previous achievements. Venner applied Spengler's vitalism to the history of politics and culture. What is the great overarching moral story of our civilization? It is not the myth of our progressive march towards greater equality, a deepening concern for victims and outsiders, and the secular saints who led the way. Rather, it is the story of extraordinary individuals who transformed human experience and changed the course of history. Venner called them higher men, those who dared to envision new human possibilities and confront the most daunting challenges. They are different from lower men in the most radical sense. Their achievements have been so transformative, so titanic, that they must be seen as meaning makers and world builders. According to Venner, these higher men had the strength to direct history, to impose order on nature, to impress new forms upon human experience, and to construct a civilization atop barbarism. As world builders, they brought the primordial potency of tradition into the actuality of human life. In Venner's view, we live in a world made possible not by universal ideals or by moral or legal systems that facilitate cooperation. We live in patterns of meaning and order that are the legacies of Promethean men, the sole and true benefactors of humanity. The human condition is therefore one of struggle. Venner wrote several books on the history of hunting and firearms. He often described his vocation as a writer in martial terms. His interpretation of Western culture emphasized the essential and even creative role of human aggression. Struggle exists firstly in the primal conflict between man and the natural world, as humanity aspires to raise itself above mere survival. Culture is the hard-won product of a life or death struggle to control nature and to transcend the ways we are pulled down by its necessities. Conflict also exists between human beings, not simply the animal competition over goods and resources, but also the human battle for honor and prestige, noble attainments that hold material rewards in contempt. Without struggle, without the fight for values, symbols, and ideals higher than bodily survival and well-being, there is no culture and therefore no humanity. For Venner, then, conflict in its most human mode is not destructive. It is, as Heraclitus wrote, the father of all things. Venner's exaltation of creative conflict expresses a key idea of the radical right, rejecting as dystopia what other intellectual traditions have envisioned as a utopia. Imagine a world of peace, comfort, equality, and cooperation, a world in which conflict, suffering, violence, and inequality no longer brutalize. For both liberalism and communism, the world represents the hope of man and the goal of history, the final stage of our political development. For Venner, however, such a world is so domesticated and deformed as to be no longer human at all. Venner's fear was not that history would teach such a post-human condition. He worried that this utopian ideal of perpetual peace and prosperity had already crippled the Western soul by undermining the manly spirit of competition and conflict for the sake of excellence. A vision of political life that seeks to increase pleasure and reduce pain, to protect the weak and restrain the strong, and to promote safety and to diminish risk. This is a recipe for decadence, Venner argued, not a charter for humanity. Under its enervating influence, human beings will grow jealous of their mediocrity and resentful towards those who aim for higher things. Venner did not regard violence as an intrinsic good. Rather, he held that Western humanity had forgotten that man must cultivate the strength to master himself and his environment, and that the highest excellences are attained only through suffering, risk, and a taste for through suffering, risk, and a taste for adventure. Venner's praise of human struggle drew from the writings of Ernst Junger and Carl Schmitt. In a letter to Schmitt, who was godfather to his second son, Junger argued that the quality of intellect is measured by its approach to the preparation of war, and he lamented that the wildness, brutality, and bright colours of human desire had been smothered by modern civilization. Venner similarly insisted on the cardinal importance of the martial values. Courage, loyalty, strength, and patriotism are the most important virtues because they make other virtues possible. Peace requires war. Friendship requires enemies. Loyalty requires exclusion. Love requires hate. Venner argued that a society that embraces the virtues of civility while denigrating the virtues of the warrior will become decadent and defenseless. We easily forget that the places of happiness and peace cannot last without the virile determination to protect them, he wrote. The places of peace survive only through the virtues demanded by war. If Western culture was once heroic and self-affirming, why has it become weak and self-critical? The question preoccupied the radical right and shaped its distinctive intellectual character. What the American writer Sam Francis called the Christian question asked whether the teachings of Christianity are ultimately responsible for the crisis of Western identity. One of the most influential thinkers on the American far right, Francis argued that the deepest problems of American life are inseparable from the basic assumptions of liberal ideology. Take, for example, the notions that human beings share a common nature and enjoy equal dignity, that human beings possess rights regardless of their race, class, or sex, and that the weak and infirm deserve special moral concern. Though these ideas are so widely accepted that few bother to think about their foundations, Francis argued that they are unintelligible apart from the moral legacy of Christianity. Francis was circumspect about whether Christianity is the true cause of Western decline. Venner was not. He maintained that nihilism had been woven into the fabric of Western civilization by biblical religion. I don't really understand that sentence. Venner described the disappearance of ancient paganism as a tragedy and argued that the real sacred scriptures of Western culture are the poems of Homer. He traced the source of Western nihilism to Roman Catholicism in general and a Dominican friar in particular. On his telling of history, Catholicism disenchanted nature and secularized everyday life. Its doctrines transformed a world full of gods, rituals, and spirits into a spiritually inert space where salvation is sought and only attained in another world. But it was the rationalism of Aquinas, Venner argued. But it was the rationalism of Aquinas, Venner charged, that paved the way to our current crisis. Aquinas' concern with a transcendent realm of abstract principles had the unintended effect of suppressing human vitality and draining life of its spiritually charged natural meaning. St. Thomas and his followers fostered a culture that put intellect over passion, grace over nature, and concepts over reality. The tragedy of Thomism, Venner claimed, is that it uproots believers from their ancestral traditions, turning them instead towards a pursuit of abstract universal ideals. Christian theology appears to no longer set the terms of our culture. This is a deception, Venner explained. Our vocabulary has changed, not our basic outlook. Our new God terms are justice, equality, freedom, and tolerance, omnipotent abstract nouns that have replaced an omnipotent deity in the idiom of our civic piety. For the radical right, the sacral power of these words is evidence that our culture remains haunted by Christian assumptions. Christianity's legacy is not found in its creed or churches, which can pass away with no loss of its cultural hegemony. The lasting effects of Christianity arise from its revolutionary transformation of morality, the cunning power that can take on religious or secular forms. Christianity gave rise to a new morality and a new humanism, setting the Western world on a deviant course. It inspired the discovery of human rights and dignity, cultivated an acute sensitivity to suffering and cruelty, nurtured the growing demand for equal recognition and inclusion, and most radically of all, inculcated a revolutionary belief that in victimhood one can discover greater power. Indeed, one can even inherit the earth. In contemporary thought, Christianity is sometimes criticized for upholding social inequalities or restricting personal freedoms. According to Venner, the problem with Christianity is that it has done precisely the opposite. Sorry, I lost my place. The political consensus that shaped the West after World War II has assumed that human beings are fundamentally equal, rights-bearing individuals, and the greatest wrongs came from infringements on our freedom to choose. That consensus is now eroding. The reason? Its picture of human life has proven to be impoverished and dishonest. We justly ascribe rights to individuals, but we know that human beings are not substantively equal. We celebrate acts of choice and self-expression, but we know that we remain defined by relationships we have not chosen and responsibilities we cannot relinquish. Venner is undoubtedly correct that our identities are shaped by and embedded in traditions that we are not free to change. This is a truism of modern social science. As characters in stories we have not authored, we now find ourselves compelled to relearn truths that liberalism was foolish to forget and the radical right has been eager to exploit. Our desire to be a part of a distinct people, to inherit and transmit a patrimony, to admire exceptional human beings, and to experience self-transcendence through sacrifice. Anyone who cares about human dignity must defend these noble aspirations from those who denigrate them, for they are integral to what it means to be human. Many of these concerns are shared by another French thinker who was shaped by the same wartime experiences that radicalized the young Dominique Venner. In the early 1940s, the Jesuit theologian Henri de Lubac gave a series of talks about the collapse of the Third Republic. Unlike Venner, de Lubac was fiercely anti-fascist. Nevertheless, he argued that the fall of France was due in part to the shallowness of its ruling ideology and the naivete of its elites. A society built around a narrow understanding of individual freedom and self-interest had invited disaster. Its liberal foundations were too bloodless to command loyalty, leaving many French feeling isolated and uncertain, yearning for the richer and more demanding form of community. De Lubac argued that the Church bore significant responsibility for this perilous situation. The seductive appeal of radical political religions could only exist where people thirst for the absolute, where the people's thirst for the absolute had been unmet by a church that had lost touch with the vitality of human life and the deep springs of its own tradition. Only by being enfolded into a vaster and deeper community, de Lubac wrote, a community whose essence is eternal, could human beings resist the allure of political ideology. But to draw humanity into this eternal community, de Lubac understood that Christianity must confront its most formidable criticism. It was not the critique that Christian belief is irrational or outdated. Rather, it was the ancient charge, voiced aloud in modern Europe for the first time in nearly 2 millennia, that Christianity is hostile to human life, that it emasculates believers, profanes nature, slanders instincts, deforms imaginations, and spiritually disarms the culture it shapes. This accusation does not deny God's existence. It gives voice to something more radical and more troubling, the accusation that the gospel is a calumny against life. To counter this charge, de Lubac argued that the Church needed to rediscover from within her own squandered heritage the life-affirming nature of Christian discipleship, a vision of our supernatural destiny that makes all earthly heroisms and sacrifices seem small by comparison. Christian heroism, he explained, will not consist of being delirious about the virtue of power. It will be found in bearing witness to the truth of Christ in the face of obvious lies and meretricious ideals. And his truth is this: the greatest power is made perfect in love. Benner and his fellow authors on the radical right did not have a monopoly on the essential role of conflict in our quest for a fully human life. De Lubac darkly warned that after the war, spiritual combat will be required for every believer who braves the challenges of living in the coming post-Christian culture. De Lubac seems to have borrowed the phrase from a popular 16th century spiritual handbook. Its author, Lorenzo Scupoli, summoned readers to enter the daily field of battle as soldiers for Christ, exercising martial discipline over their untamed passions and sinful habits. Spiritual combat was written from within a Christian culture, and Scupoli repeatedly cautioned against the self-deception of wanting to appear a good Christian in public while remaining inwardly unrenewed. But doing spiritual battle in a secular culture, de Lubac implied, requires Christians to confront a very different enticement to spiritual dishonesty. It is the temptation to want to remain a Christian in private without outwardly appearing to be one in society at large. Against the temptation to hide our light under a bushel, de Lubac urges us to face our enemies boldly and joyfully with the spiritual weapons of courage, love, and hope. In his suicide note, Venner wrote that in choosing a voluntary death, he had resolved to uphold his ideals until the very end of his life. He died in the hope that the strength of his resolve could, like meaning makers he venerated, remind France of the forgotten truths of her patrimony. Benner imagined himself a lonely warrior defending lofty truths, but his truths were not lofty, and he was not alone. He is joined by all those whose narcissism led them to also imagine that our identities are the self-justifying source of what matters most in life. Venner was blind, as many are today, to the great fact of Western culture. Its highest achievements testify to our astonishing ability to answer the call issued from on high, to rise above our identities and reflect the divine light of the universal through the creaturely limits of the particular. Venner's denial of transcendence left him doomed to imminence. He died in the fatal conviction that the purpose of existence is to move from life to death through unceasing inner worldly struggle. His failure left him trapped within the flattened horizons of the progressive ideologies that the radical right fails to overcome or even seriously to contest. But there is a fighting faith, a true one, and it seeks to set the world right through loving obedience to a divine word passed on through a holy tradition. De Lubac never commented on Venner, but he could see, as we must today, that Venner's ideals and those of others like him testify to a desire that the radical right tragically misunderstands, the desire to overcome great challenges, to resist comforting illusions, and to transcend lower pleasures is more than a key to understanding our culture. It is a desire at the place of Venice blasphemy for a God who leads us from death to life. There is no greater power on earth than to be under the command of the one who pronounces in the world, ye shall have tribulation. But be of good cheer, I have overcome the world. The end.
You know, these right-wing people that are so philosophical, they get, and then you're right, I heard when you growled at that, oh, it's all based in love. Like, this is just, it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous to say, oh, the world revolves around love and God is love and the greatest truth is love. And, it's just like, and,
Platitudinous?
Yeah, and then they use these kind of, well, they cannot survive unless they have some kind of mystical will rooted in the sentient soul of the society. Like, what the fuck are you talking about? You know what I mean? Like, half of that I didn't even understand. It's just like it's just, you got to set up rules. You just got to have a set of rules and then let everyone figure out all the rest of this kind of stuff. You know what I mean? Like, it's yeah, it's just write a fucking constitution and then,
Yeah, instead of this sort of airy fairy, I mean, it is fundamentally platitudinous. So, I mean, that was what annoyed me about Andy, So I mean, I read it. This is the third time I read it, and I thought, is there something in it? But there isn't. It's just that let's just go back to Christianity and do it more. So to the person who asks whether it's by Andy, no, it's not by Andy. It was Andy Nowicki talking about it. And maybe read it.
Yeah, no, it's not like the foundation of anything. These people never produce the foundations for anything that's like useful and something that is like cogent and a set of principles, to follow. And that's about it. And I told you it was the only thing that separated Hitler from everybody else, and the only reason he got any kind of power was because he made a 25-point bullet point agenda and said,
do you know it was 25? Actually 25, or are you just pulling a number?
No, it was 20. Yeah, 25. Hitler's 25 points. You can look it up.
Oh, wow.
Hitler's 25-point plan. Yeah, it even comes up on its own.
Yeah, so these Christians have nothing to offer. So I basically said, look, can we discuss my book now? Because, I mean, I do follow him, and it's like, he's reviewing another movie, and he's reviewing another movie, and another movie, and another movie. It's like, well, can you read my, since you say you've got my book, can we talk about my book now? And it's like, no.
Yeah, I'm looking at Hitler's 25-point plan right now. I'm not going to go through it, but the point is that at least he did it. And God knows, this was a different age when people would actually, be able to follow a program. And that's the only reason he got anywhere, because he defined the Nazi Party. He gave it definition.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yes, the 25 points of the Nazi Party. Should we read it? To read it. Yeah, let's read it.
Okay, go ahead and read it.
Or do you want to read it?
We demand the union of all Germans in a great Germany on the basis of principles of self-determination of all peoples. We determine that the German people have rights equal to those of other nations, and that the peace treaties of Versailles and Saint-Germain shall be abrogated. We demand land and territory, colonies for the maintenance of our people and the settlement of our surplus population. Only those who are our fellow countrymen can become citizens. Only those who have German blood, regardless of creed, can be countrymen. Hence, no Jew can be a countryman. Those who are not citizens must live in Germany as foreigners and must be subject to the law of aliens. The right to choose the government and determine the laws of the state shall belong only to citizens. We therefore demand that no public office of whatever nature, whether in central government, the province, or municipality, shall be held by anyone who is not a citizen. We wage war against the corrupt parliament administration whereby men are appointed by post to post by favor of the party without regards to character and fitness. We demand that the state shall above all undertake to ensure that every citizen shall have the possibility of living decently and earning a living. It should not be possible to feed the whole population, then alien non-citizens must be expelled from the Reich. Any further immigration of non-Germans must be prevented. We demand that all non-Germans who have entered Germany since August 2nd, 1914 shall be counted to leave the Reich immediately. All citizens must possess equal rights and duties. The first duty of every citizen must be to work mentally and physically. No individual shall do any work that offends against the interests of the community to the benefit of all. Therefore, we demand that all unearned income and all income that does not arise from work be abolished. Since every war imposes the people's fearful sacrifice in blood and treasure, all personal profit arising from war must be regarded as treason to the people. We therefore demand the total confiscation of war profits. We demand the nationalization of trusts. We demand profit sharing in large industries. We demand a generous increase in old age pensions. We demand the creation and maintenance of sound middle class, the immediate communalization of large stores, which will be rented cheaply to small tradespersons, and the strongest consideration must be given to ensure that small traders shall deliver the supplies needed to the state, the province, and the municipalities. We demand an agrarian reform in accordance with the national requirement and the enactment of law to expropriate the owners without compensation of any land needed for the common purpose, the abolition of ground rents, and the prohibition of all speculation in land. We demand that ruthless war be waged against those who work to injure the common welfare. Traitors, usurers, profiteers, etc. are to be punished with death regardless of creed or race. We demand that Roman law, which serves as the materialistic order of the world, be replaced by German common law. In order to make possible for every capable and industrious German to obtain higher education and thus the opportunity to reach this position of leadership, the state must assume the responsibility of organizing thoroughly the entire cultural system of the people. The curricula of all educational establishments shall be adapted to practical life. The conception of the state idea, science, and civilization must be taught in the schools from the very beginning. We demand that special talented children of poor parents, whatever their station or occupation, be educated at the expense of the state. The state has the duty to help raise the standards of national health by providing maternity welfare centers, by prohibiting juvenile labor, by increasing physical fitness through introduction of compulsory games and gymnastics, and the greatest possible encouragement of association concerned with the physical education of the young. We demand abolition of regular army and creation of a national folk army. We demand that there be legal campaign against those who promote deliberate political lies and disseminate them through the press in order to make possible the creation of German press. We demand all editors, their assistants on newspaper publishing in the German language shall be German citizens. Non-German newspapers shall only be published with the express permission of the state. They must be published in the German language. All financial interests in or in any way affecting German newspapers shall be forbidden to non-Germans by law, and we demand the punishment of transgressing this law by the immediate suppression of the newspaper and the expulsion of non-Germans from the Reich. Newspaper transgressing against the common welfare shall be suppressed. We demand legal action against those tendencies in art and literature that have a disruptive influence in the life of our folk, and that any organization that offends against the foregoing demands shall be dissolved. We demand freedom for all religious faith in the state insofar as they do not endanger its existence or offend the moral and ethical sense of the German race. The party as such represents the point of view of a positive Christianity which, binding itself to any one particular confession, it fights against the Jewish materialistic spirit within and without, and convinced that a lasting recovery of our folk can only come about within on the principle. In order to carry out this program, we demand the creation of a strong central authority in the state, the unconditional authority of the political central parliament of the whole state and all its organizations, the formation of professional committees and committees representing the several states of realms to ensure that the laws promulgated to the central authority shall be carried out by the federal state. The leaders of the party undertake to promote executions of the foregoing points at all costs, if necessary, at the sacrifice of their own lives. So, I mean, he did give some directives in there and stuff like that.
Yeah, I guess that was his manifesto.
Yeah, that was his, but that's the only reason he got anywhere. None of these people have any kind of really.
Yeah, I mean that essay was basically, I mean, it sounded really deep, right? And it sort of, well, it didn't offer anything. I mean, for people who are looking, for comfort or meaning in that essay, that very long essay. But yes, Andy was saying, "Oh, it's so good," and so I kind of over posted on his Substack because I was so annoyed. Because, I just think, these people, they just want to flop around. They just want to flop around. They don't really want to do anything. He just wants to, yak in his car and look sad and write long novels and, it's just completely pointless. And it's like, well, can't you just say something about my book after you read it? It's not that long. I mean, I guess I focus on him because, he's supposed to be intellectual. He's supposed to be an English professor. He's supposed to be educated. But they can't do it. None of them can hack it.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, okay, so basically, I said, well, we'll go. Shall we talk about it? This essay that you're so in love with, and I might as well read you the exchange we had. So I basically said, can we talk about it? And then he said, I get it. I get that you think that the West's problems would be solved if we took your advice and converted to Islam en masse. And it's like, well, that's not my advice. And it's like, I already told him that when we were actually talking to each other on Quran Yule. So then he said, you're welcome to that belief, but I don't find it terribly interesting as a topic of debate or discussion. There's a certain monomania which you seem to approach all issues and events, which means reducing everything to here's why Islam is superior. Yeah, damn right I'm going to be saying, well, that, I am offering a solution. So I'm going to say, yes, my one is better. But you can say why it isn't. I mean, that's how these things are done, isn't it? And then he says, I find it to be kind of a bore because you mainly seem interested in pontificating rather than having a discussion. And I thought, it's not me he's talking about. He's the one always pontificating in his car. So nobody interrupts him. I actually have conversations with people. So, he's just projecting. But anyway, perhaps if I annoy him enough, he'll read the book.
Yeah, maybe. We'll see. I mean, the thing is that, yeah, they're too philosophical. They're too, like, up in the air with, things, and it's not like brass tacks and that kind of thing. You need more something, I'm looking for something more brass tacks.
I mean, I actually have to look up that expression. I'm not sure what that means.
Brass, that's interesting. I think it's a British expression, actually.
Let's get down to brass tacks. I think it means, well, nitty gritty or something.
Yeah, like the nitty gritty, like
Details
the
of immediate practical importance.
yes, yeah, details of immediate practical importance, brass tacks. Like, none of these people are brass tacks. Everything is so highfalutin, and it's just not. They're not simplifying it.
Well, I mean, I have simplified it, but they don't like my simplification. And I always think, okay, you don't like my idea. Well, just tell me what you don't like about it. And they can't, because really it's like they don't want to, and they hate it, and they know I can't make them because I haven't got an army, and that's it. That's really. And I thought, well, that's not very grown up. It's not very grown up to say, you know, we don't like it. We don't wanna. You can't make us. But anyway, Steve, I mean, I do think you're at least more grown up than they are, you know. And it's. I know you hate me going on about idolatry, but really, um, one of the things. Okay, so he actually posted a Substack about it, and okay, maybe I did go a bit over the top. So the title of his Substack was Dominique Venner's Bear Bodkin, and I see that I posted 17 comments, one after the other, because I just so fed up with it. It's like you can't do any more Christianity. It's a spent force. It's a I don't know, it's a firecracker that you've just used up or something. It's not going to work again. And it's like, oh no, no, our precious Christianity, you can't. So okay, so that is what I think is a problem, and then fundamentally it's sort of, well, in that case we'd just rather die. And this is really the collective reaction that I'm getting from all of them. We'd rather die. And it's like, well, just admit it. And I guess they already have, but not in so many words. And that was what Dominique Venner did. He killed himself. People thought he was Catholic because of. But I thought, well, it is a bit rude and a bit inconsiderate to use, you know, a church to make a point, particularly the inside of it.
Yeah, no, he probably shouldn't have, set himself on fire, or whatever he did.
Oh, he shot himself in the mouth.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably not that helpful to do that.
Yeah, because it is the it is narcissistic to do it, really. Maybe Aaron Bushnell was a bit of a narcissist. He was the one who self-immolated, because some people didn't even notice it or didn't care, and all that has to happen is for the media to not report it, and your martyrdom is completely bypassed. And I actually hadn't heard of him until today, but you had, apparently, but I hadn't heard of him.
Yes. Yeah. Well, I don't know, Claire. I mean, it just seems that, I don't know. Yeah, you're right. They don't have a program and all this other kind of stuff. And if they wanted a conservative, patriarchal society, then secular Quranism would help that. And, I don't know. So I guess they don't want to ban usury. I guess they don't want to whip unwed parents, and stuff like that. I guess that, or a one-party state. And I guess they just don't want any of that.
No, I think, they're all beta males. It's sort of like, I think trying to get into their minds is like, I don't want to be talking about things like that because, it hasn't got you very far. I mean, to me, talking about these things. And it's all, oh, I'm just happy saying stuff anonymously online, but I'm not going to be saying it face to face with anyone. And this is the same thing that Carol did. She's happy to talk about, using an anonymous avatar, but I'm saying, well, I mean, you could be talking to your family. And it was like, no, 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 I'm not even going to talk about anything to anybody in real life because, one of the things that we discussed before she blocked me was my proposal to have licensed brothels in red light districts, and she was saying no, 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 I can't support that. So I say, well, what does your husband think? Because I'm sure men and women would have a very different view about these things, and she couldn't even talk to him. She couldn't even talk to her own husband
About what?
about having licensed brothels in red light districts.
Oh,
Because
who, Carol?
Yes.
Well, yeah, I mean, that is a bit, for a Muslim, I think that's a bit much.
Well, I mean, it could be just like, well, I've met this sort of, woman, and she thinks to manage the transition from matriarchy to patriarchy, you can't make them all go cold turkey. You can, you still have to allow them to have their free love in red light districts, but you're just sort of saying, you can only have it there. Just don't have it anywhere, and just understand that we're slowly phasing it out, but we're not going to make it illegal, kind of thing. And but I would have thought you can talk about these things to your husband. But anyway, I mean, she's not going to talk about any of these things that we talk about to anyone she knows in real life. So I mean, what's the point? What's the point if okay, you'll probably say I don't talk about these things that you talk about with me in real life. Well, actually, I'm prepared to talk about it in real life to people in Speaker's Corner and people that I'm in the same room with. So I see that a lot of people just can't do it.
No, a lot of people, well, yeah, and they hide, and she hides her face. I don't even know why she hides her face and doesn't want anyone to know anything about her, and she
Or
doesn't.
which country she's in. I mean,
Yeah.
it's just so ridiculous.
Yeah, I don't know what they're all hiding. I mean, all these people are hiding, and people who hide never win. If you're not going to show your face, then you're not going to get anywhere. It's just, it's just you're not going to get anywhere if you're this hidden. If you won't even show your face.
Yeah, but unfortunately, leadership qualities are not being taught. They're not being acquired. So I'm afraid a lot of these men are just, they're just like women. It's like, oh, it's not me. I'm not doing it. Who, me? No, not me. Somebody else. And then those in a position of leadership I think that they're scared of the people below them. Probably because they think they won't agree, and then they'll hate me for saying those things. So it's just safe to talk about the Jews because it's like at least we're all agreed that we hate the Jews. So we can always blame them. Oh yeah, and we hate the Muslims and the migrants, and we can just go on about that, but never ever discuss the solution. I mean, I thought at first it would, they're a bit stupid, and then I think it's a pathological drive for safety to only complain but never propose a solution. And if anyone should do that, they'll throw rocks at you Like, how dare you? Who do you think you are proposing solutions? Which is a reaction I've been getting from from Jay for a while now. So on the one hand, but he sort of it's sort of like he knew that I'd been going on about secular Quranism before I met him, and but and then when he complains, it's almost as if he's complaining that I haven't made it safe for people like him to support it. Because I'm sure he would be happy to support it if it wasn't so socially and politically risky. So unfortunately, we are talking to very low grade men who just aren't prepared to even talk to it's not about I'm not even asking them to go to speaker's corner and make a speech. And it's like, well, lots of people in the party, or who, I mean, a lot of these people have political associates. They just can't talk. They can't talk about it. Literally cannot talk about it. I guess it's a taboo subject.
Well, I don't know. I feel like the things that they focus on are the wrong things, and they're just like they're.
Yeah. Oh, did you listen to Arvel, the one about?
No, I didn't listen to that. I mean, I want to listen to it, but at the same time, I don't want to hear droning on about metaphysical fucking bullshit that I don't even understand. You know what I mean? That I don't even think that they understand. And this all just seems like nonsense to me. And, I, I just, yeah, I want the basics of what your belief is. And I don't know. It's Claire, people are not interested in what you have to say because it's like we said, it's basic, it's to the point, it's straightforward, it's not complicated. um it's not like this deep, thick, kind of not understandable ideology.
Yeah, and so they understand it because did I tell you that I was in this space and I was working up to saying the answer, the solution is secular Quranism, and the sort of gaggle of English girls said it before I said it, which I thought was good. Even though their intentions were not hostile, because they obviously hate my idea, but that I think in a way it's sort of working because they know what they know what the answer is. They just can't face it. It's this sort of elephant in the room thing, don't you think? It's the elephant in the room.
Yeah.
And the essay, before I forget, all this talking about equality and so boring and mediocre and looking after everyone, and it's like they're talking about the female instinct to kind of nurture everyone and look after everyone, and basically that there is the sort of the men who want to go out and achieve things, which they are prevented by the suffocating rules of political correctness. And I think a lot of the truths in that essay are actually universal. It applies to men of all races and nations, that they want to go out and do stuff, while women want to keep the house nice and look after the children.
Well, obviously they don't want to do that since they're not even trying to get into that position. They're not even working for that kind of outcome, and that's why I say it's unstable, because nobody wants it and nobody wants to stay like that. And not even the men want to stay like that. It's too, and especially now that they have the option and, they don't have to do it, they're not going to do it. And, that's why I say just create different social programs, either social structures for breeding or create an artificial womb and just do it that way instead of forcing everyone to just do what they don't want to do.
But I'm saying it's just a fact of life that's what religion has always done. If you're not that kind of religion, you won't be around for long.
Well, I think that these people would rather not be around than live that way. You know,
Okay, so I'd rather die than have to marry and stick with a member of the opposite sex and have children. But then you kind of want to have children. You, Vincent.
yeah, I know. The thing is that I am really, really divided over that for a few reasons. Number one, the world is so fucked up. I don't even know if it would be right to bring a child into the world. Number two, I'm not the best genetic specimen on earth. I don't know if I would give my child a healthy body and healthy mind genetically. I don't want to bring a sick child into this earth. And also, is it even, are humans even ethical? Is it possible for humans to be good? I mean, everything just, it's like it's really complicated. And this all worked when there was no birth control and people couldn't help it. That's the only reason why people populated the earth, was because there was just nothing else. There was no way around it. There was just no way around not populating. And now there's a way around it, and once people have the option, they stop doing it.
Yes, so you can regulate that behavior by changing the law and forbidding um, illegitimate offspring, or treating those who have illegitimate offspring, and treating them as sex offenders. I just discovered today that in China they're going to say, because they have such a low birth rate, that they're going to lower their standards and say it's okay for unmarried people to have uh, unmarried parents to have illegitimate offspring. So I'm afraid. I mean, the future looks bleak for the whites and yellows. The browns and blacks are going to take over. But what I'm saying to you, Vincent, is that you don't have to do it. We can just agree on the principle. That's all we have to do. Nobody's gonna grab us and make us, become parents. So I don't, what you seem to be fearing, you don't have to do. It's the, the women of childbearing age, and the men who might be their husbands, who need to be worried about. But I mean, that's how you kind of keep your people in existence. Doesn't matter what race you are. So yeah, a lot of the things he says is just universal. It's like everybody, I mean, when men want to go out and do stuff, and women want to, yes, they do want to stay and look after children, because they sort of know that in their old age they kind of want children and grandchildren.
Well, they're
So they
not
have to
doing it.
do that.
You act like everyone wants to do all this stuff and they're just not doing it because why? Because they have options, Claire, because they don't fucking want to.
Yes, but there is a kind of biological imperative.
Well, obviously it's not
Well,
strong
you don't
enough.
have to do it. You don't have to do it because you're gay, so you're off the hook, and so am I.
But I'm saying that this biological imperative is not strong enough to motivate people to breed in large numbers. It's just not.
I've told you my plan to control the birth rate and who to give the pill to and stuff. So that can be sorted, really.
I don't think that these propositions are going to go very far, because even white right-wing nationalist men, I think, want to use condoms at times, and or want their wives on birth control, or
Yeah,
don't.
yeah. I'm not banning that at all. Okay.
Yes, you are.
I'm
You're going
saying
to you're
I'm
going
not going to
to
ban
get rid.
contraception for everyone. It's just a pill, just a pill.
Okay, well then, whatever it is that men will use not to have that many children. They'll use it.
Yes, I think that was what happened to the Roman Empire. And you may remember that there was a bachelor tax. And basically, because the men were gay, they got round that. I mean, too many of them were bachelors saying, well, we'd rather be gay with each other than take a wife. So Rome declined and
Well,
fell.
they should have just opened up public temples where the mothers would live, and that, you know, raise the children in public temples and then populate the population that way.
Well, I'm sure there were a lot of illegitimate offspring, and you know, they weren't much good at all because they were mentally ill and sexually abused and criminal and delinquent and all that.
Well, if they were raised in like a government structure, like, you know, and it was part of the government's duty to raise healthy citizens, then, you know, they should have done an emergency act like that instead of, well, look, they couldn't get their act together. There's no way to get your act together once the genie's out of the bottle. You need to find another way to reproduce. You can't put it back in the bottle.
Yes, of course you can by changing your religion.
Well, nobody wants to become Muslim, and, you know, then it's, you know, if they don't want to become Muslim, there has to be some other kind of way. And it's
But
just,
I'm not saying people have to become Muslim. I've already said we can still have sex with each other, even though we're not married to each other, but it will be accorded a lower status. So I'm not, you know, I have been very firm about the licensed brothels in red light districts.
people don't want
I'm
to
not
pay a
going to say everybody's going to go cold turkey.
nobody wants to buy a prostitute. They just want to be able to go to a bar and find a willing woman.
Yes, okay, and then they can go and to a love hotel, the bring your own prostitute thing.
Well, nobody wants to pay her. Why not bring her to your own apartment when you can just, you know, bring her to your own apartment?
Yeah, okay. Well, but I mean there will be. Well, I know these things operated in the Philippines, and then they were actually called love hotels. I think in Japan also.
Well, I'm
So,
just saying, most people don't want to pay for hotels and prostitutes, so they'd rather just have a willing woman come home with them. I mean, the more it's just these artificial wombs need to come out, and Japan really needs to do it because I don't see them adopting Islam. You know, I just don't see Japan adopting Islam, and if they don't do something, they're going to lose their population. So they might as well. They have to think of something, or otherwise they're gone. And I don't think they're going to choose Islam. I think they would rather die out than become a Muslim country.
yeah, but they can adopt these rules without having, you know, mosques mushrooming all over Japan. I mean, that is the whole point of secular Quranism. It's just a rule system. You know, there won't be any uniforms or burqas and stuff like that.
Well, you know, I just don't think that they see, you know, this kind of sexual control. I mean, they're very sexually liberal. I mean, they love their porn, they love their whores, they love, you know, all this other kind of stuff. And, you know, the idea that Japan is going to sexually self-regulate itself is absurd. I mean, they're obsessed with porn.
Well, everybody's obsessed with porn. I mean, but
I know, but the idea that
look, it could be banned instantly if there was the political will to do so.
there's
I mean,
not I,
Pornhub could be outlawed you know, at the stroke of a pen
yeah, but
by Congress if they wanted to do it.
yeah, but who in the government is going to sign that declaration?
Obviously, you have to make a case for it. So, okay, I
Yeah,
know nobody's interested, but
this-
you know what? I'll just bang on about it to people like Andy, who obviously doesn't want to do. He thinks it's a bore to talk about it, and then he's just going to drive around looking depressed and be a sad sack. That's what he does. So, well, these people can be mocked endlessly. I mean, that's the only way to get them, really. You have to hunt them out and shame them. And it's like, well, you don't support it because, well, you're not marriageable, or yeah, I mean, you're probably gay. You don't want to marry anyone. Nobody wants to marry you, or I mean, otherwise you would be able to support the principle. And you did yesterday when we were talking that people going to marry to have children. They should stay together for the sake of the children. You said it twice. So I don't see why people who actually have children like Andy can't do the same.
But it just, yeah, I mean, I don't know who's going to enact your programs, Claire, because I don't see
No,
anyone.
okay. I'm not expecting it to be, some bill going through Congress, but surely there are people prepared to talk about it. But everybody's so beta, basically. They're all, oh, I'd rather, I won't be seen dead talking about it, but I'll complain about the Jews. So it's obviously some kind of mental block or psychological inhibition. And I think it can be broken by somebody talking about it in the media, and then it's like, oh, did you see on CNN, MSNBC, BBC, whatever, did you see that thing, that whatever? It just has to be done through the media. But I know the CIA are controlling it. I mean, that's why, uh, for the past few days in the UK, the talk has all been about Kate Middleton, the Princess of Wales, saying that she's recovering from her operation, and that's it all the time, 24/7, it seems, because there are people in the media who tell us what news we're allowed to listen to. They don't report the news. They just indoctrinate us with their propaganda. And why do they concentrate on the Princess of Wales? Is because they're pandering to the female voter, to the female audience. I bet the men would be sick of it. So it's sort of like, even that is revealing. Because I was just talking to my mother and she was saying it's so annoying, this endless Kate Middleton saying that she's getting stronger. It's just ridiculous. But she gets it where she is. My mother gets, the same propaganda that everybody in the West gets. And it's obvious why they're doing it. That they are trying to influence the female voter. And that's why you're not getting discussion programs about what's going on in the Ukraine and, foreign policy and, that sort of thing. It's all geared to distracting the female voter, which brings us back to the essay by Matthew Rose, who is basically saying we are being feminized. Western men are being feminized. But he didn't say it because he's too scared. So, in the end, he didn't say anything. But anyway, Andy was impressed. But then I think that's just evidence of his mediocrity and his cowardice. Because really, I would have thought, if I cared about my country and somebody presented me with a horrible idea, I would have to argue about it. I'd say it's a stupid idea because A, B, and C, and D, E, and F, and so on. But these people, even if they're educated, just can't do it.
Well, I don't think they can do a lot of things, and I think that they're scared of meat and potatoes issues, and yeah, I think they're scared of meat and potato issues.
Well, that's why you can come in and really shame these fuckers.
I don't know.
Because at least you can concede the principle that it would be better for children if they were brought up by their two married parents. I think I would have thought anybody could say that without cringing. And if they could say that, and you said it twice, then everything else will follow. So I'll keep at it with Andy. He may block me, but then
Well, I think it gets to the point where you don't want to enforce this, maybe encourage it, like maybe, encourage it, but you don't want to make it illegal or stigmatize it, you know, if it doesn't work out that way.
stigmatize what?
Divorce.
Well, I mean, people used to say, I had a failed marriage, meaning I was divorced. And then they kind of change the words, right? They keep changing the words for the same thing because they want to hide, you know, the what's the word? The unwelcome implications of failure. Because they want us to think that divorce is something everyone goes through and we shouldn't worry about it. But then it has a knock-on effect on the quality of the children. And I'm afraid China is just going that way. They have their own standards. It's like, oh, well, we're not having any children. Why should we be too fussy about who gets born? And they'll just become like the West.
Well, find another way. Find my way. Do surrogates. Have a government-run breeding program. Do something, or just convert to Islam because I'm getting really tired of like the in between and nothing getting done. So just make your choice, mine or your way, and somebody do something. But maybe they'll just do nothing, and maybe they'll just decline and disappear, and won't do anything. Maybe that's their destiny. Maybe they're that. Maybe they're that lost.
Well, I think you could help by exercising the option of becoming a secular Quranist to see if anything changes for you. And if it does, then you can,
But I can't.
examine your options.
I can't support whipping unwed parents and banning usury and making a one-party political state and reenacting slavery and all these different kinds of things.
Why not?
It's just
You
not
can
my.
always renounce it later.
No, it's not my value system. I don't want to promote.
What are your value system?
Well, I've lived like, of course, no murder, no theft. Basic human rights types of things.
Yeah, but
And
sexual immorality you refuse to discuss because it's as long as a piece of string.
what? What do I refuse to discuss?
Sexual immorality.
I don't refuse to discuss it. I don't really believe that there's much sexual immorality except for abuse, but between consenting adults, I don't think there's anything wrong.
Well, you've seen what has happened with so many people thinking it's a human right to have sex with another consenting adult. What we have now in the West is because of this idea. I mean,
I know, but just all you need to do is keep up your breeding, and if it becomes a government directive to increase the population, then all this would really not be a problem. We just need to increase population, whether that's surrogacy, government-run programs, or an artificial womb. Do something. It's an easier fix than changing the whole entire culture.
You make it sound so easy that, artificial wombs are going to be invented in what, 10, 20 years?
Yeah, but in the meanwhile, we can do things to increase the population until that point. But yes, put a lot of time, energy, and money into creating artificial wombs and just, move forward.
So, but your proposal is, well, it's not. It's higher maintenance than my one. I don't know why you
It
think
wouldn't
mine.
be it wouldn't be higher maintenance if it was just a machine. It would be lower maintenance. Then women don't have to get pregnant. You don't need to deal with it, and you can produce as many babies as you want.
Yeah,
And
but we haven't even got the technology, so you have to wait at least 10 years or something.
well, in the meanwhile,
And it'll be so expensive, and most people will be priced out of it. So it's just so hugely impractical.
no, technology eventually becomes cheap, and I'm not saying don't do anything in the meanwhile to increase population. Yes, you want to increase your population in the meantime, but yes, put a lot of time, energy, and money into that, and then we'll see what happens.
But nothing is going to happen okay, what I'm saying is nothing is going to happen because nobody's going to support what you want.
Well, I already got the one supporter that, you know what I mean, and the thing is that if I just present this as a straight thing and for straight men, and if it's for them, then maybe they won't be so opposed to it. And I think yeah,
I think you're clutching at straws. You haven't heard from John Vance.
Not just John Vance. Well, he's number one, and then number two is whatever that snake guy's name was. And he agreed that we need.
But he is.
But there's already artificial wombs that they're making, so they're already making the technology. We went over that yesterday. They're already making the technology. It's just that it needs to be promoted a little bit more now.
Well, I think my way would be far, far quicker.
Not faster. That to change the whole culture would.
Yeah, I mean, all I need is one to be interviewed in mainstream media, and then people will talk about it because that is the green light I need, and that is why I am on a media blacklist. I know I am. So it's sort of, well, it's just a matter of switching on the light and getting to the light switch. As far as I'm concerned, I mean that's how battle ready secular Quranism is.
Okay, Claire, we've been going for an hour and 40 minutes. I'm gonna go.
All right. Thank you for coming.
Yep. Bye.
Bye.